Thanksgiving's always a tough time of the year for me because, we're getting into a holiday season when everyone's excited and happy. You get to hang out with your family. But the sad part is football season is now winding down, and we've got to come to terms with the fact that we won't get to watch Nebraska play every weekend from here on out. This season, you could argue, is similar to the last few. It's been frustrating. You get a little bit down and depressed because your team's not winning or doing as well as you thought they would, at least at some point throughout the beginning of the season. And because they weren't able to reach those expectations, at least in the middle, people got frustrated and didn't want to watch anyway. The good news is they've bounced back in a big way. Matt Rule made a move that obviously changed all of our outlook and our perspective on how high they can go, at least to end the season. And now we get to enjoy one more day, one more game, one more opportunity. So we'll call it for the chance to get back to the preseason expectation. The expectation that Nebraska would improve on last season's, 5 wins? The expectation that Nebraska can get back to a bowl game for the first time in however many years. And I feel pretty good. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel pretty good. But I was looking at the weather. I was talking to my cousin today about the situation. He's not so confident. He said that he works at Inside Nebraska. He said that the Inside Nebraska staff all picked Nebraska, but he decided to roll with Iowa. And I said, why Iowa? He said, gut feeling. He told me he's all loaded up. He's got the jackets, the electric hand and foot warmers. He's going in like it's a snow game in New York or something. But apparently it's going to be pretty windy, pretty cold. Obviously a night game in Iowa City. But he picked Nebraska to lose. And I was like, wow. And it gave me an idea. Like, I am a homer and I am pretty optimistic. But there are people who I think, make pretty good predictions. And he gave me some things to think about. And I think the number one thing is if it's really cold and if Dylan can't throw the ball, like I heard that Dylan had to run back in to warm his hands up this week because they were practicing in 40-degree weather. So if he has to warm his hands up during the Iowa game, how's that going to go when it's, 0 degrees out? Will be interesting. And when that happens, will they be able to throw it like they were able to last week? And if they can't, will Emmett Johnson be able to run like he was able to last week? You're playing a much different beast of a defense. I will tell you that. Respect Wisconsin. Obviously, they've been pretty solid all year, but Iowa has been a force and a problem that Nebraska hasn't been able to conquer in quite some time. I'll tell you the number one reason I'm the most optimistic. It feels like every year Nebraska has a chance to beat Iowa. And it's when Nebraska's at their worst and Iowa's at their best, right? Every year Nebraska gets close in a game where it really shouldn't be. It should be a situation where Iowa takes them down, handles business, and moves on pretty comfortably. But that hasn't been the case. You go back to last year and Chuba Purdy, third string quarterback, had his way with their defense at times and then obviously got shut down later in the game. But what if you saw more consistency? What if you saw an offensive game plan that allows your quarterback to thrive, the weapons to get open downfield? What if? And that's why I'm pretty excited to watch this one. It'll be one of the best games on Friday. There's a whole slate. We'll go through them, give you guys my predictions for the whole weekend. It's fun because it's rivalry weekend and anything can happen. Similar to what happened last week. You guys obviously enjoyed the Wisconsin win, but then you got to watch Texas A&M and Auburn go down to the wire, 4 overtimes. I left that game in the fourth quarter thinking, I'm going to watch this on my phone at dinner. I'm leaving dinner thinking the ending's going to be, well over. They're going to fourth overtime, so I'm in the Uber watching it. Anyway, that was a great game. Alabama got worked by Oklahoma. What were the other big upsets? Kansas wasn't really an upset, but Kansas was a upset in terms of the rankings. So there's some pretty exciting games last week, and hopefully we can replicate that magic and have a really fun final weekend, week 14 of college football. So we'll see. But got the first super chat I want to get to. Caleb, thanks for being a member. Thank you for your $10 donation. He says, hey, Connor, my thoughts as the season is coming to a close. I think Nebraska secures Dana for the OC job next year, and I don't see any seniors opting out for the bowl game. Go big effing red. Caleb, you're more optimistic than I am. The truth hurts, and the truth is Dana Holgorsen did not leave you with any comments this week in his press conference when asked about his future that would lead you to believe he's coming back, right? Now, that doesn't mean that he's not coming back. It doesn't mean Matt Rule won't make a push and that they won't try to keep him around. But it didn't sound like he was eager to start those discussions. He wants to think about how do we beat Iowa? How do we win in a bowl game? We're going to focus on all of our energy and attention in those two areas. And once we get past that, we can talk about next season. I have been, I don't want to say confident, but I felt pretty good about the idea that he would come back, because why would he flirt with the idea to begin with? Why would you come to Nebraska for 2 months just to work with a team who's broken down and tattered? Are you that bored? I mean, he did say he was bored. Are you that bored where you need a project and you want to get a little bit of extra money on the side? I mean, money has nothing to do with it. When you're a guy like Dana Holgerson and you're that rich already, you're probably living a pretty reasonable lifestyle, because most football coaches aren't very flashy, don't have tons of houses or cars, right? Maybe his daughter has expensive bills. I don't know. But I will say, he came to Nebraska because he wanted to, and that made me feel a little bit hopeful that he would stay longer than just this 2 month sprint. So if I was to make a prediction today, I can't. Honestly, I can't. Because it would just be a BS prediction. I think it's a 50-50 whether he comes back or not. I'm hopeful. I'm excited for the opportunity for him to, because the offense could look really, really interesting with Dylan working with a coach like that. And I think, there'll be a chance for him if he doesn't get a head coaching job at another school. But think, if he revives the offense and Nebraska starts scoring 40 points a game in the last 3 weeks, which they already had a 40-point output against Wisconsin, then he could become a very attractive name. And who knows what'll happen. But that was the first point. The second thing you said, which I disagree with as well, I don't see any seniors opting out for the bowl game. Oh, Caleb, there will be opt-outs. I can promise you that. How many opt-outs? We don't know. But let's pull up and I'll give you my prediction for who opts out. Depth chart. Okay. Opt-outs in the bowl game. First guy, senior, Jamal Banks. I would say 60% chance Jamal Banks does not play in a bowl game. Maybe 70. Isaiah Nayor is the next senior. I would say 100% chance. There's no way Isaiah Nayor is playing in the bowl game. He's fully focused on getting to the NFL. He came to Nebraska to play in the NFL, although he may be able to get a little boost in the bowl game and hopefully boost his draft prospects. I don't think he will. I think he'll focus on working out. He's already done enough in his 2 seasons playing college football that he's going to get a shot. Don't know if he'll be drafted or if he'll be a free agent, but he's not playing in Nebraska's bowl game. Ben Scott, Bryce Benhart, I believe both of those guys would play in it. And that's all of our seniors on offense, right? Okay. Oh, Micah Mazuka's the other one. Micah Mazuka would probably play in the bowl game. Don't know why he wouldn't. Okay, going down here. Hutmaker and Ty Robinson, they're going to play in the bowl game. Those guys have wanted one. They love the program. They've been here since the beginning. Unlike Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor, who came in to go to the pros, these guys came to be a part of Nebraska, and they want to see it through. MJ Sherman, I believe he's another one who would play. I think he wants to go to the NFL, but he can always use more gameplay. Tommy Hill won't. He's injured. He's done. Deshaun Singleton and Isaac Gifford. Isaac Gifford 100% would play in the bowl game. Deshaun Singleton, I'd say it's a 65-75% chance he would play unless he felt like he was already locked in to become a free agent and wanted to work out for it, but I don't see that. So I think the only two that I'm really concerned about are Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor. I know Nayor's not playing. I mean, it'd be shocking to me if he did. But I would be pretty surprised if Jamal Banks was going to play as well. So those are my bull opt-out predictions. I have reasons to believe all of these things I'm telling you. I'm not just making guesses, but yeah. Jeff says he's responding to Dana Holgerson. I think he wants to pick his own staff. I honestly think that's the holdup with him committing to coming back next year. It very well could be. The rumor mill will tell you that Garrett McGuire's gone next year, that EJ's up, the running backs coach, and who was the other one? Obviously Satterfield. I felt like there's another guy we were talking about. I guess it must have been Ed Foley. Anyway, the rumor mill would tell you that all those guys are gone, in which case Dana would be able to pick. And I've also heard that if Dana was going to make a pick, he would go after his wide receivers coach, who I can't remember where he's at right now, Tulane or something. He's at a different school. He was with him at Houston. And I also think that if Dana was to come back, he would pull in some former or current Houston wide receivers from the portal. And yeah, it's a prediction that some experts have made, and I don't know how much of those are out there yet, but I mean, in the next 2 weeks, you're going to start to see crystal balls and all that for guys who are about to be in the transfer portal or who are being tampered with and courted by Nebraska. Because I promise you, just like Nebraska is being tampered with, they are tampering themselves. This is a dog-eat-dog world. And when you get your own players poached, you got to do it back to somebody else. Malachi Coleman is the guy I'm talking about, right? Nebraska lost him because teams were tampering. There are other players at Nebraska who've been tampered with. I don't know how many or who, which ones. Obviously, Dylan's the highlight. But Nebraska's going to do what they got to do to go and get some guys as well. So we'll see what happens. I think depending on who the offensive coordinator is next year, whether that's Dana or someone else, will make for a very interesting portal season. Because if you go and get someone who's not Dana, first off, what style of coordinator do you go and get? What offense are you running? Are you running something that's heavier pass? Because obviously when you've got Dylan Raiola, that's what you want to do. Or are they going back to a more pro style game? Who knows? We'll have to see. Depends what Rule feels. But with a new offensive coordinator who's coming from another school, what players does he bring with him? What relationships does he have? That's a lot of value in coaches today, right? Think about that. Deion Sanders, not only was he hired by Colorado to come and be their head coach, but he was hired by Colorado to bring in two superstar players, two NFL caliber guys in Shedeur and Travis Hunter. So the value in you as a coach isn't just your X and O and your knowledge of the game. It's what recruiting base do you have? What guys are tied to you that we could get? That's a interesting factor that now plays in that didn't play in before these last couple seasons. Max says, I know it's early. Who are some of the potential teams that we'll line up with for a bowl game? I'll talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to pull up all the bowl projections and we'll go through a few of them. Josh says the big question is whether the O-line will block like they did last week. I agree with that. I think that last week was a tough test against Wisconsin, but, Nebraska played last week like they played against Colorado. They played like they wanted to be there, like they cared more than anything in the world. Actually, I wanted to talk about Nebraska's most important games of the season, at least how the team viewed them, and see if that effort level gave us any indication on, or if the meaning of those games gave us any indication on how much effort would go into them. We'll talk about that in a second. Chris, thank you for being a member. Thank you for your $5 super chat. I can't open the super chat. It says message retracted. So if you say something else, I will respond to it. Let's see. Ross says, you're the best, bro. I've been seeing some fake Connors popping up. Well, thank you, Ross. I appreciate the support. Jason says, I disagree also. The names you mentioned will play because it will improve their draft stock. So Jason disagrees with, are you saying you disagree with Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor? That's interesting. I would love to know your argument for why. I think Nayor, or Banks, there's an argument to make. I've heard things about Nayor. That's why I've heard things Nayor said. That's why I'm pretty confident in what I'm saying about Nayor. But Jamal Banks, I think there's an argument if you could make one. Chris, thank you for the $10 super chat. He says, does Nebraska have the resources to compete with the teams like Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas when it comes to NIL funds? And if no, will we ever be a national championship contender? Well, first, if Nebraska didn't have those resources, I think it'd be really hard to say they would be a national championship contender. This actually opens up an entirely new conversation. There's so many things I want to cover today, so I got to go fast through some of these. But I want to start here, Chris. Before I answer if they do or don't have the resources, let's talk about NIL and championship contenders. So I'm going to minimize your message real quick while I open this up. So this week, I'm not sure if you guys saw, Dave Portnoy went and he talked about, on his podcast, he talked about the Larry Ellison situation. Larry Ellison's worth $240 billion, by the way. He talked about Larry Ellison and his wife reaching out to him. Dave is talking about this. So what happened was, Dave Portnoy, I'm just showing you this graphic so you can see what the whole deal is. It says when our guy Larry Ellison zeroes in on somebody, it's a done deal. Remember that quote. Now I'll tell you the story. So Dave did a podcast, talked about how the wife of Larry Ellison, who's, I think she's in her 40s, he's 80, reached out, no judgment, reached out to Dave and said, hey, I'm a diehard Michigan fan. I was there during, I don't know what era, maybe the Denard Robinson era. Who knows? 2007, 2012, who knows? She said, I am tired of seeing them lose, and I need them to be good. My husband's Larry Ellison. We have deep pockets, and we need to make this happen because we know you're committed to it, and now that you're committed to it, we want to commit to it. So Dave said, okay, great, we're going to set up a meeting. They set up a meeting with Bryce Underwood, and Bryce Underwood, obviously the number one player in the country, the number one quarterback. He was all set to go to LSU, and Dave, obviously with the help of Larry Ellison and his wife's money, courts this guy to Michigan for, I don't know, between 11 and $12 million. Okay. I respect that. I think it's awesome. But wait. Don't lose your mind yet. I respect it, and I think it's awesome that people are doing whatever it takes and whatever they have to make sure their college football team is great. They're doing whatever they can within the rules that makes sense to make their team better. Would I do the same thing? Absolutely. Would I tell others to do the same thing? Absolutely. If my dad had $250 billion, I promise you, Nebraska would be Oregon plus Alabama plus Texas plus the Green Bay Packers. Nebraska would be so sick and so freaking good. It would hurt you. I'm not kidding you. It would hurt to watch. And when I say hurt you, it would be so bad that you wouldn't want to watch anymore because you'd be like an Alabama fan of the Nick Saban era where you didn't even want to watch games unless it was Alabama versus Georgia because you knew it was going to be a 50-point blowout. Okay. Now go back, because although I respect it and love it, I think it's awesome. I think there needs to be rules and parameters because right now it's the wild, wild west. And when you have the wild, wild west and when there is no cap, there is no limit, you can have a few guys like Larry Ellison come in and change the entire program. You can change the whole game, just like Phil Knight did at Oregon. There was no rule for T. Boone Pickens at Oklahoma State or for Phil Knight at Oregon, and they were able to give hundreds of millions of dollars to those programs to completely change the image, completely change the brand, and find a way to be successful in an ever-evolving world of college sports, right? So right now, where we changed from the T. Boones and the Phil Knights is you can buy your players. Just like in the NFL, the MLB, the NBA, the MLS, the whatever, the Euro leagues and soccer and hockey, everything. There have to be rules and cap limits because you can't just buy your way in. Not everyone has that amount of money. The problem when you have an unfair advantage with all that money is you're skewing the situation. And it's like, okay, well, we're the best team because we're like the Yankees, but really we're only the best team because we have the richest donor. Our Warren Buffett was actually willing to give us the money. So Warren Buffett's not willing to donate to NIL. He's Nebraska's closest billionaire into the program, right? The one who could really make a dent, and he won't do it. So because Nebraska doesn't have one, I don't know who Texas's is or who Florida's is, whatever. If you don't have a fair playing field and a limit, it makes for an unfair advantage, and it will ruin the sport. Because now you'll have Michigan, and then whoever Ohio State gets, or let's say Cuban said, I'm going to go to Indiana and I'm going to give them billion or hundreds of millions because I'm a multi-billionaire. So you could have these programs that now just dominate and the rest of the sport is hurt because of it. So we need a salary cap. It needs to be fair. Like I said, I respect it, love it, think it's very cool that these guys are so committed, but someone needs to step in and say, we're going to put caps on everything. And we can't have $50 million rosters. We need, everyone has a fair deal. It's up to 20 million max for your roster. And that's that. So now let me go back to the other part of your comment, Chris. Does Nebraska have the resources to compete with teams like Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas? Okay, within reason, they do. Nebraska's NIL can fund a $20 million roster, I'm sure. And those teams are all teams who would typically have a $20 million roster. The problem is when Michigan now adds in a quarterback who's making, what, $4 million a year, $3 million a year? Yeah, 4 years, $12 million would be $3 million a year. When you add that in, I think that's going to be the highest paid quarterback in college football. Of course it's going to be because Jaden Rashada over at Florida 2 classes back was supposed to be the $12 million quarterback who went to Florida, who ended up not getting his deal. So he bounced out to Arizona State, then bounced over to Georgia where he's like the 3rd string quarterback. None of that matters. The point in what I'm trying to say is Nebraska can compete if there's a fair playing field and we cap it. But they cannot compete when they don't have a billionaire like Larry Ellison in their back pocket. If Warren Buffett came to the table and said, yes, I'm donating 99% of my wealth to whatever charities, and I'm going to give 5% of it to Nebraska football, okay, now I'm making a different argument because I want to be on the unfair advantage, right? Which I don't. I would never want that. I think it's bad for the sport of college football, and I'm a college football fan first because without the sport of college football, Nebraska football isn't as fun, right? So we need it to be fair. We need it to make sense, and Nebraska will be able to compete with all of those schools if it makes sense. You have to remember, the Nebraska fans are so committed. They sell out the stadium. They watch the games, which makes the media right deals go up. They buy the merch. They participate in terms of supporting local businesses. They donate. I mean, Nebraska fans are far and away one of the most supportive fan bases in the entire, not just college football, just sports in general for colleges. So when Nebraska has all of that money coming in, they can compete with anybody. But they can't compete with billionaires. The billionaire thing screws it up. So, yeah, Portnoy, good job. Larry Ellison, I mean, to Larry Ellison, we could do the math. Larry Ellison giving $12 million to Portnoy to give to Bryce Underwood is the equivalent to me giving you $1 or 5 cents. It's so stupid. I was talking to my dad about that today. I was like, what do you think it was that made Larry Ellison say he was willing to give 10, $12 million? He's like, what do you mean? He doesn't care. It's literally buying a cup of coffee for him. Less than that. It's nothing. He's 80 years old. He can't spend all of his money. So it's like, yeah, I'll just give it away. I give half of it away anyway. So what's me giving away another $12 million for my wife, right? Anyway, long rant about that whole deal, but I'm passionate about it because I think it could really screw up the sports. Juan says our strength is our loyal fans. We need to join together, and after every win, we should donate $5 to $20. Would motivate players to win. Oklahoma State actually had QR codes on, was it helmets? I think they had QR codes on helmets. So after a player scored a touchdown or whatever, you could donate directly to that player, which I think is freaking awesome. What it really is, what makes the most sense, because individual fans can't be funding this, right? Like, what can I afford? I can afford to give $1,000 a year personally, or $500 a year. And that might be high. I can afford it because the business I'm in, I'm incentivized for Nebraska to be good. But if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, what could I afford? $200 a year on players max, and most people can't. Now, most people, we've got hard financial times out here for some. There's a big wealth gap in America, right? So what really needs to happen is the local businesses need to step up. And for marketing, they need to say, okay, well, what's the marketing worth? And what can I do with these players? And how much can I afford to give them? And what's the return going to look like, right? So if you have a bunch of marketing opportunities from local businesses, that's what really could make an IL pop off. And I think Nebraska does a good job at that. I know Jeff Sims had to deal with Acres, with Amigos. I don't know what other local businesses are doing NIL deals at Nebraska, but I'm sure there are plenty. There's a bunch we don't even hear about, right? I mean, Sandhills Global was a big sponsor for, I think, Husker Online, and I'm pretty sure the people who own that, is that the Pede family? I don't know. Another, hundreds of millions of dollars in that family, or billions, I don't even know. And that's the type of money that can change a program, So it's happening in Nebraska. Money's flowing, it's coming in, but yeah, long-winded response. Sarah, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $2 super chat. She says, was last week a fluke, or will we fire off again? So I've talked about this in videos before. Regression to the mean is very common in sports. So typically, if you have one explosive weekend, it's not a reflection of the entire year. It's you got to account for what's actually happened with the offense and the defense. And are they going to play that way again? Probably unlikely. They're probably going to regress back to their average, which the average right now for Nebraska is scoring 17 points a game. Let's say they improve a bit on that, though, with Dana Holgorsen, and they boost it up to 24 points against Iowa, right? Well, Iowa's got a really good defense. I would probably expect Nebraska to score somewhere between 20 and 24 points. So would I still call last week a fluke? Calling it a fluke, it takes away from the game a bit, because I think Nebraska played a really solid team in Wisconsin, and they just caught them on a bad day. Nebraska really took advantage in a lot of good moments. But I think that Nebraska playing Iowa right now, when Iowa's a lot stronger and when the weather could go against them, it could make Nebraska look a lot more, I don't want to say the word average, make Nebraska look a lot more like how they have the rest of the season. So that leads me into the next thing I want to talk about, Sarah. Thank you for bringing it up. So Nebraska has played 11 games this year. Here they are, right here. And I want to tell you guys how I would rank these in terms of most important games. Because I've heard some people try and say Iowa is one of the biggest games of the year, one of the most important games of the year. It's not. This Iowa game is actually one of the least anticipated and least important games of the entire season. And I wanted to rank these in terms of most important and biggest games that decided the outcome of how this season played out. So number one most important game on the season was Colorado, and it's not even close. Not only was it an early season game, but it was a rivalry. It was a revenge spot. It was against a highly motivated Colorado team, and a team who could have come in here and beat Nebraska. As we've seen, Colorado's gone on a run and won 8 games this year. So winning that game was extremely impressive, and it did wonders for not only the program, but the players' confidence, the fan base, and the marketing around Nebraska football and recruiting. So Colorado was the most important game of the season. The number 2 most important game of the season, I would argue, is UCLA. UCLA at the time was a game Nebraska was supposed to win by, I believe, 7 points. It was at home. UCLA was like a 3-win team, I think. And Nebraska was coming off back-to-back top 25 losses. It was a chance to get that bowl win, or that bowl game, that win that got you to a bowl game. And the fact that they lost it was obviously painful, but it made you think there might be a chance Nebraska loses out. And I think that makes that worthy of being the number 2 game on the schedule. The number 3 game on the schedule, I would say, well, actually, let's bump Wisconsin to 2. We'll bump UCLA to 3. So Wisconsin's more important because Nebraska then had more desperation. So Wisconsin's the second one, because at this point in the season, you knew that you were going to go to Iowa, where you were going to be an underdog. You knew if you didn't win this game against Wisconsin, there was no other hope. I mean, you could have possibly upset Iowa, but if you lost to Wisconsin and didn't get things turned around, you would have been screwed. So Wisconsin's the second most important. UCLA's the third. I would then say Indiana was the fourth. It was a top 25 match, or a top 25 team. It was an anticipated matchup. It was a close spread, and there was legitimate reason to believe Nebraska could have gotten bowl eligible that day. Not only would that have pushed them to a bowl game, that would have got them back in the top 25 rankings and totally changed our perception on the season. That's 4. The fifth most important game, I would argue, was Illinois. Illinois was a top 25 game at home. Huge for recruiting, huge for national relevancy, and for the Big Ten. If Nebraska would have won that game, it would have completely changed our opinion on how high this team could have gone this year. We would have all thought this was a 9-10 win team, right? So that was probably the fifth. The sixth most important game, I would then say, is Iowa. Rivalry, on the road, game you can win, not supposed to. It's going to get you to 7 wins, but it just doesn't mean that much. Whether Nebraska wins or loses this week won't really change any of our opinions. We'll all be optimistic about next year. They still got to a bowl game. If they lose, it's gonna be to a tough Iowa team on the road at night in a cold weather environment. So we won't be upset by it. After that, I would argue Rutgers was the next most important. After Rutgers, I would argue USC was the most important, and then Purdue is probably the last. Maybe Ohio State before. No, Purdue and then Ohio State. Ohio State was supposed to be a blowout, so whether or not Nebraska looked competitive or not really wouldn't have changed anyone's opinions nationally or internally. So Iowa State didn't mean as much either. And then obviously UTEP, Northern Iowa, I don't care about. So that's how I would rank these games in terms of importance throughout the season and how meaningful they were. The Iowa game just doesn't mean that much. It's a rivalry game, so it means a lot to you because you want to talk shit to your neighbor. But it's not like, oh, Nebraska has to win because there's some, high stakes or some big reward at the end of that tunnel if they do come out with the win. Now, it's going to be important because it's going to be big for recruiting and momentum, and there's a ton of reasons you can argue it's going to be a big game. But when you compare it to some of these others like Wisconsin or like Indiana, well, no, not Indiana, Wisconsin or Colorado, sorry, then yeah, it doesn't even come close. The Wisconsin and Colorado games were so big. So now let's talk about how Nebraska played in those big moments, right? When the game meant everything against Colorado. I mean, it meant everything. It was the most important game of probably most of those players' lifetimes. They felt the pressure to an unbelievable extent. I felt the pressure, and I'm not even on the team. I was in the stadium, and you know that feeling when you hear certain noises or see certain things that get you really emotional, and you'll get chills that run down your entire spine throughout your body. I mean, your hands tingle. I had that day multiple times in the stadium. The game almost drove me to tears, right? And I've had that happen before where I'm just so pent up emotional. And I think about this a lot, you guys. This is my job. I make content full time talking about Nebraska football. So the amount I research, the amount I talk to people, I'm very emotionally invested in this team for obvious reasons. But that day I felt it. And I've never felt anything like that. I mean, it was so powerful to be in that stadium. I'm so fortunate to have been able to go to that game. But anyway, the Colorado game and the Wisconsin game last week, I'm sure it was the same kind of vibe. The players felt it because they said, we have to win this week. There's no excuse for losing to Wisconsin right now. And they went out and played one of their best games. So in the two biggest moments, Nebraska showed up in the biggest way. Iowa isn't as big of a moment. Now, to the players, they're going to feel like it's a big moment. So I'm hoping they come out and play inspired in a similar fashion, but it's on the road. The energy will be different. I just don't think that you're going to be able to replicate the dominant performances we saw against Colorado and Wisconsin when you don't have that same fired up energy inside of you. And again, Nebraska's going to be pissed off. It's a rival game. They're going to be coming out firing, you would hope. But it's not the same as what it was against Colorado. It's not the same as what it was against Wisconsin. It felt like life or death. Wisconsin and Colorado felt like if we don't win this game, it's over. Throw in the towel, the season's done. And it's going to feel like 2022, 2023, whatever, any season before 2024. It's going to feel like pre-Matt Rule era. And it just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't an acceptable loss. Neither of those two were. And I just think Iowa isn't of that same caliber in terms of importance on the game. So for us, it's important. For the players, it's big. But we'll have to see. I go back to Sarah's comment. I don't think last week was a fluke, but I do think Nebraska is going to have a little bit tougher time than they did against Wisconsin. Lots of thoughts, guys. Lots of thoughts. I want to talk about bowl games in a second. I want to go through the chat, just make sure I didn't miss anything. Z Guy says Wisconsin was the most important because if you don't get bowl eligibility, then you lose recruits and meaning in beating Colorado. Yeah, that's true. I just think Colorado was big at the time. At the time, if you would have lost to Colorado, it would have been so hard to come back from. You know, Colorado's perception nationally at that point was that they were going to be a 3 or 4 win team. And if Nebraska would have lost that game, they very well could have lost the next week. I mean, they would have been so defeated. So, I mean, who'd they play next? They played Purdue. Well, they played Northern Iowa. I'm not counting that. They played Purdue. So they almost did lose that anyway. Either way. Chris says Iowa is super important. Again, I think to the fans, it is super important. Daniel says, I heard we won't have Iowa on the schedule in 2 years. Is that true? I don't know about that. Jeff says Nebraska needs to win 8. 7-6 or 6-7 is not very much improved. We've all said it for years. They must show improvement. 8-5 is improvement. I agree with you, Jeff. Unfortunately, the way the season's played out, at this point, when you reset expectations, 7 wins would be a good finish. 7-6 would be a strong finish for Nebraska. I think 8-5 would be an exceptional finish for Nebraska. Now, we go back to the beginning of the season, and we said 7 would kind of feel like, they improved, but not that much. Whereas 8 was like, yeah, that was the key number to get to. So I hear what you're saying, but right now, if Nebraska gets to 7 wins, from a national perspective, people are going to be really impressed because of that middle point in the season where Nebraska went on a 4-game losing streak and just, I mean, they didn't look like the same version of themselves. They looked terrible. They just looked like they didn't want to be in half the games they played. They were sloppy. The offense couldn't get going. It wasn't Dylan Raiola. So 7-6 would still be impressive, but 8 wins is what they got to get to. I agree with you. Agreed. Evan said, thank you for the $10 super chat, and thank you for being a member, Evan. He said, Connor, how big is this game when it comes to determining what caliber of bowl we play in? Big Ten may have 4 teams in the playoff. So could a win put us in a decent bowl game? Happy Thanksgiving, GBR. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Evan. Let's talk about bowl games. I'm going to minimize you real quick. So these are some of the bowl projections, okay? Sports Illustrated has Nebraska playing in the Music City Bowl versus Mississippi. This is USA Today. They've got Nebraska playing in the Pinstripe Bowl versus Pittsburgh. The Athletic has Nebraska playing Ole Miss in the Music City Bowl. SportingNews.com has Nebraska playing North Carolina in the Pinstripe Bowl. And I think that was all of them that I pulled up. Those are all the projections I pulled up. So what I think is going to happen, I listened to Sean Callahan talk about it on his show. Someone sent me a clip, and it was Sean talking on a podcast about, I can't remember exactly what his reasoning was for his prediction. I think it had to do with money and fan travel time or the dates of the game. But it was that Nebraska will be playing in Tampa in the ReliaQuest Bowl, or they will be playing in the Music City Bowl. Both of those matchups will be against SEC teams. So he doesn't think it'll be the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, although the Guaranteed Rate Bowl would make sense for Nebraska because of where their record is. He doesn't think it'll be the Guaranteed Rate Bowl because Nebraska's fan base is too strong. The money that a bowl game wants to make off that fan base is significant when you're talking about a team like Nebraska who has people who will travel for it. So you're going to get the first pick bowl games to take a Nebraska. Well, the ReliaQuest and the Music City have higher priority picks than Guaranteed Rate Bowl. So, although record-wise, Nebraska might not be the first pick for one of those two games, they're going to get it because of their brand. Well, if they get it because of their brand, you're now going to match them up against a pretty good team. So you would expect like a Missouri, an Ole Miss. I wouldn't even say in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a 6-win team this year. You could do Oklahoma, but that's not a big game where a lot of OU fans are going to want to travel to, right? They had a let down season. Maybe a Texas A&M. I mean, there are plenty of teams who you could throw in there that were successful in the SEC this year, but didn't make it to the SEC championship game or the playoffs. So right now, I really feel confident that if Nebraska beats Iowa, they're going to end up in one of those two bowl games. I have no idea which one. I think Sean Callahan said that he felt like the ReliaQuest was the higher ranking bowl. So the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa would put you against, a pretty good SEC team. We can pull up the standings right now. It's still hard to know where these are going to finish because we still got games to play on Friday and Saturday. And a lot of these rivalry matchups are toss-ups. But here's what it looks like. Texas is first in the SEC, going all the way down to Texas A&M. Those are teams Nebraska likely wouldn't get matched up with. But South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU are all teams that could populate in that bowl game with Nebraska. The matchups would be relatively fair. Nebraska at 7 wins versus one of these teams at either 8 or 9. And they would draw good viewership and probably positive fan turnout. So right now, I would say it's going to be one of these three: Missouri, Ole Miss, or South Carolina. If Texas A&M loses, if Alabama loses, I guess you could see one of them getting placed in. But more likely, it's like a Missouri could be 8-4 after the Arkansas game this week. LSU could be 7-5 or could be 8-4 after the OU game this week. Both these teams are all three of these teams are favored in their games this week. South Carolina is the only underdog against Clemson. So that's kind of my feeling right now. Who knows what'll happen? Again, I defer to Sean Callahan because I'm sure he has a little bit more inside information and he talks to more people about what that's going to look like than I do. But yeah, I'm pretty hopeful that no matter what happens, Nebraska gets a good matchup and they can go out and win. So we'll see. Thank you for your question, Evan. I hope I answered it the best I could. Let's see. Sarah says Nebraska pays like a Bitcoin stock, up and down constantly. You're so freaking right. Dominique, thank you for being a member for 2 years. He says, do you think if Mickey didn't have his issue and still was on staff with the wide receivers, I'm going to stop you there, bro. I don't think Mickey would have stayed at Nebraska to be a receivers coach. His stock was extremely hot at that point. Even if he wasn't going to get a head coaching job at a big-time school, he could have gone somewhere smaller, could have gone to the FCS and been a head coach. There would have been a lot of opportunity for him, and I think he would have felt slighted by Trev Alberts if he wouldn't have gotten that head coach job. So right here, I already don't think he would ever have taken a demotion after what he did at Nebraska when Scott Frost was fired. He says, do I think that they would have had a better wide receiver room? I think they would have had a better wide receiver room with him. I just don't think it would have been possible. He says, I believe Dana could have gotten Nebraska 2 to 3 extra wins this year had he been in charge. I think with Dana, Nebraska would have won the Ohio State game. I also think, it's hard, right? Because if Ohio State would have known Nebraska had Dana Holgorsen, they might have schemed differently. They might have been a little bit more amped up. They played really down that day. They played down to the level of their competition. But yeah, you could say they would have beaten Ohio State. You can say they would have beaten USC if he came earlier, UCLA. So I would say they would have won 2 of those 3, Ohio State, UCLA, or Ohio State. I think the Illinois game, their issue was their defense. Nebraska's defense just gave out against Illinois. They just got run down. So the Illinois game, I don't believe would have changed with Dana Holgorsen. Random question. Who is your favorite player on this roster? I mean, let's go to the depth chart again. I wish I knew the answer to that question off top. I've had a few throughout the year, throughout the last couple, and things change, right? So earlier in the season or preseason, my favorite player was Javen Wright. I was like, oh, Javen Wright is going to be a star for Nebraska this year. I thought he had his health issues corrected. I thought he was going to make a huge impact. I thought his body type and his play style would be a major deal for the Tony White defense. He was good this year, but then it kind of shifted, and I liked Makai Bayer's attitude. But then John Bullock came out and just made plays constantly, and I was like, okay, John Bullock is my new favorite. At this point in the season, I've already been favoring Ty Robinson. I always like Ty Robinson and Jamari Butler. But at this point in the season, the way he's played, keep in mind, I'm not doing anybody on offense because I'm not as fond of our offensive. Not that I have any issues with the offensive players, but I have like this connection with the defense just because I'm so invested in them. But at this point, I would say Sierra Wright is my favorite player on Nebraska's entire roster. Willis McGahee is in my top 5. Who else? It's really got to be Sierra and Willis McGahee. I mean, I'm so optimistic about both of them next year. Sierra is, okay, the thing is, I like playmakers. I like guys who not only do a good job doing their job, but they go out and do something that's a little bit above and beyond. And Sierra does that. Blocks kicks, has interceptions, makes crazy tackles, forces fumbles, good in coverage. I mean, yeah, Sierra's very cool. I also really appreciate and respect players who are good speakers on camera. I like watching the press conference interviews, and I like listening to what they have to say. I like guys, yeah, who are well-spoken. I remember I DM'd MJ Sherman when he first got to Nebraska and IGC because I listened to their press conferences, and I was like, damn, these guys are just studs. You can tell by the way a guy talks and, you know, the way he can hold a conversation and the insight he provides. You could tell a lot about the person. So a lot of respect for guys like that, but Sierra has been a stud on the field, a stud in his interviews, bright future. I mean, no matter what Sierra does, we know he's going to be extremely successful. He's already been an actor. He's a social media guy. He's popping off. So Sierra is my favorite player right now. Daniel, thank you for becoming a member to the Corn Craze Army. I appreciate you. Thank you for the support. Chris, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $5 super chat. I live in Nashville. Would love to see us play in the Music City Bowl. I think there's a very high likelihood that they end up there. I've never been to Nashville before. I've been to Knoxville, but I'm sure the Nashville experience for a Nebraska Bowl trip would be exceptional. I know the bar scene there is awesome. My friends try and get me to go all the time. Still got to make a trip, but yeah, I think that'd be a fantastic bowl destination. Wouldn't it be cool if Nebraska plays Oklahoma? If they win, when would be the last time Nebraska beat Oklahoma and Colorado in the same year? That's a great question. You think back to like 2009? They didn't beat Oklahoma that year, did they? These are too hard to think of off the top of my head. 2009 Nebraska football schedule. I know a lot of stuff, but random questions like this that pop up are hard to answer. Okay, they didn't. Oh, yeah, they beat Oklahoma that year. Okay. They didn't play Colorado that year. Oh, yeah, they did. Okay, there it is. 2009. I guessed right. Honestly, this was a guess. I knew 2009. I felt like 2009 was the year they beat OU, but I didn't realize they beat Colorado that same season. So, wait. There it is. So, yeah. Top 20 Oklahoma and an unranked Colorado. I think the OU game is pretty unlikely. The way you get the OU matchup in a bowl game is if Nebraska loses to Iowa. I think Nebraska and Oklahoma both need to be like a 6-win team to match up together. Daniel says, any way we could play the Gators in Tampa? No, I don't think so. I think the Gators are going to end up in a lower tier bowl game because they're only 6-win team. Well, they'll be a 7-win team, right? Gators record. I think they're going to be a 7-win team if they beat Florida State. Yeah, they will be. But no, I think there are too many teams with priority because of their winning records. So like Missouri, we said, has 8 wins right now. Could be 9 after Arkansas. Ole Miss should be 9 after Mississippi State. Alabama should be 9 after what's it? Alabama plays Auburn. But Alabama could also sneak into the playoff. South Carolina could be 9. So, yeah, I just think there are too many teams with priority over Florida right now. But we'll see. Who knows? High Mountain Guy says he wants Mizzou. We could play for the bell. Yeah, Mizzou would be, I think, a good matchup. PM, thank you for being a member. He says, Connor, why do you never interact with the chat unless they give you money? I do. I interact with, before I responded to this, I've responded to a bunch of chats that didn't tip me. It depends on how active the chat is. So if I have an active chat where I'm getting a bunch of supers, I have to respond to them first, priority. Because wait, is my screen cutting out? One sec. What the heck is going on? Anyway, I have to respond to the people who are paying for priority, right? If they send a super chat, let me make sure this doesn't keep clicking out. Damn, what is going on? Guys, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I was having some technical issues before the stream, and I unplugged some stuff and replugged some stuff in for a quick reset. Hopefully that fixed it. I apologize. I don't like when my stream's glitching out. I didn't see it until just now. I have my setup, so I have my main monitor here, and then I have a secondary monitor here, but it's kind of behind me, so I don't even see myself on the camera. I just see your guys' chat window, and I see the screen I'm opening to share with you. So sometimes I miss it. If I ever have any technical stuff, you guys can always tell me in the chat, and I'll do my best to make corrections on audio or on visual. But getting back to what you said, I respond to every chat I can, but I can't respond to all the chats that don't give me money because there's a bunch of them. So right now we have slow super chats, so I'm able to respond. After a game, I have zero chance to respond to chat unless they're paying because I get flooded with tips. And yeah, they're priority. But I do my best. I promise you. I'm not ignoring people, and I'm not here just trying to make money off you. Like, just doing my best. PM says I'm here all the time, and it's rare. Yeah, no, dude, I do it pretty often. I just don't do it as much when there's a lot of super chats. Because if I was ignoring people's super chats, they'd be upset. Rightfully so. People are paying money, and they want to make sure that I answer their question. That's why they pay for it. So out of respect for people's money, I respond to them first. Caleb says, who do you think makes the 12-team playoff? Okay, really quick, I actually did want to talk about this. What was I going to show? Let's just do the top 25 playoff games. Top 25. So here are the current rankings. Obviously, in. So I think out of the top 12 right now, there are 3 teams I see that could slip out. I think Clemson slips out because I think Clemson will lose to South Carolina this week. I think SMU slips out because I don't think you're going to have 2 Big 12 teams get in. And I think Arizona State would actually beat SMU in the Big 12 championship game. I think Notre Dame slips out because I think they'll lose to USC this week. And I don't think a 2-loss Notre Dame game or 2-loss Notre Dame team who doesn't have a championship opportunity is going to fall. In which case you'd have to replace 3 teams for those losses. I think if Alabama wins this week, that's 1. I think if Arizona State wins this week and wins the championship, that's 2. I think your last team, man, that'd be really tough. Man, I don't know. I don't know who my last team would be. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's going to be interesting because after you have these games on rivalry weekend, which could go who knows what way. Last week was an insane, chaotic week, right? Last week was left and right. You'd look and there was a massive upset. So if you see the same deal go on now, you're going to have a lot more 2-loss teams. Look at all the 1-loss teams right now. Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, SMU, IU, Boise. You have 8 1-loss teams right now. We could see 4 of those teams lose. You never know. So unlikely, but maybe 3 lose, 2 lose. Whatever does happen, it makes for a really interesting championship weekend because then championship weekend's going to shuffle it. So I don't know. It's still too early to tell. Kind of like with the bowl games. It's who freaking knows. Let's see. Arnav, thank you for being here. I see you in the Discord all the time talking about your prize picks plays, and I appreciate all the picks you put in there because I like to ride some of yours once in a while. He says, Connor, what do you think of our draftable prospects for this upcoming draft? Do you think Tommy falls out of there in the first round, and will he end up being our highest drafted player? Let's check a draft board. Let's check a recent one. I did see someone post up a Tommy Hill in the first round the other day, and I was actually pretty surprised by that. So this is ESPN's ranking, which I don't know how much I trust ESPN's rankings, right? But this is what they say. Let me minimize your chat. This is what they say about cornerbacks. They've got Tommy Hill listed as the 7th best corner in the class. Crazy because they've got him in front of both Denzel Burke, stud Ohio State corner who's been multi-year starter there, and Kobe Bryant, the Kansas corner, who again, stud. Impressive that he's that high on the list, especially given all the shit he's gone through this season. So Tommy Hill, in my opinion, if you go off lists like this, won't be a first-round draft pick. Probably a late second round, maybe a third round. Really depends how he performs. You know, the football season means one thing, but the combine performance and the workouts and the in-person interviews mean a whole other. So I'm not an expert on this stuff. I don't know how that'll play out, but yeah, he's the highest potential, obviously. No edge, no linebacker, obviously. I mean, you're not going to see any other Nebraska players on this list. Not in the top 10 or 15. Let's think. So you asked me the draftable prospects. I got to pull it up again. Let me pull up my depth chart because I can't think of every player off the top of my head. So Jamal Banks, in my opinion, isn't a draft prospect, more likely a free agent. Isaiah Nayor, more likely a free agent. He has a lot of upside, fast, tall, big guy, and teams will want to look at him, but you know, he hasn't had that great of a season. Been some inconsistencies. How much do you blame the offensive scheme and how much do you blame him? I don't know. Ben Scott, probably not drafted. Bryce Benhart, I mean, he's been up and down, right? Last year, he looked like the best he has all career, and then this year, has he done more to improve on that, or has he kind of been stagnant? I would argue that Ben Scott and Bryce Benhart likely are both free agents. Maybe Bryce Benhart sneaks into the 7th round. On defense, Nash Hutmaker, I don't know where you see him. Is he a 6th rounder? Ty Robinson could be a 2nd rounder, 3rd rounder. I don't know. I definitely feel like he's 3rd rounder or better. He should be a first, second team All Big Ten player, which if you're a first or second team All Big Ten player and you've got the size he does and the production he's had over the past, whatever it's been, 4 years, you would think Ty could pull into the 2nd round, but it's competitive, man. A lot of it's going to do, or a lot of it's going to have to do with his measurables, his strength, and all that stuff they test for in the combine. Maybe Ty is up there as high as Tommy Hill, but Tommy still, he's so touted and so hyped up. These scouts really like him. I don't know if Ty could surpass that. So Ty's probably the 2nd best one. John Bullock really seems to have played his way into at least a special teams player, free agent in the NFL. So maybe John Bullock is a free agent. And Deshaun Singleton, you would assume, is a free agent. I don't know about Isaac Gifford, Hart, but hasn't played his best football this season. So I'm not sure what his NFL outlook looks like. So that's my take, Arnav. But it's hard to know, dude. It's hard to know. Let's see. It's flickering a lot. Glad I was able to get that. Doug, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $2 super chat. He said, what's your setup look like? It's hard for me to show from this angle. I mean, I could take a picture on my phone for you right now and show you what it looks like. Maybe that's the best way. So here's my point of view when we're looking at it. We'll go 0.5 for you. Bang. So let's make that brighter so you can see it. This is so janky. I'm sorry that I have to do it this way, Doug, but hopefully it works. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. So the monitor right here is my secondary monitor. That's where you can see I'm watching myself. The center monitor here is where I'm interacting with the chat. And right here is my camera right underneath that light, that little black area. And then obviously my mic's in front of me. And I'm in my bedroom. I have a bedroom studio. So I have big curtains floor to ceiling on that right side that I close so I can limit the light. And then I've got a couple lights right here. I mean, you can see if I do this. See, I got these lights right here that light up the wall. And then that's it. We're in the game. So I tried to make it a very simple studio. I'm running a very, very small operation, right? A very niche YouTube channel. It's a full-time deal, so it's got to be a solid setup and somewhere I can work every single day. But it's not like I need a studio. I'm not making all the content that you would see other YouTubers do, so I don't need as much space. I will say the future of Corn Craze, the future of any content I do, I think is going to be in a dedicated studio. So I move out of this apartment in February, and I think I'm going to Arizona. I've told you guys that a few times before. I haven't decided what I want to do yet. Most likely I'll rent an apartment, figure out, you know, I've never lived in Arizona. I've never lived anywhere except for California. I lived in Orange County at my mom's house until I was 18. I lived in my dad's condo until I was like 21, because he would travel a lot and not be there. And then I think when I was 22, my two best friends and I moved to LA, and I've been living in LA ever since. So I've never lived outside of California. I've never lived on my own. I've always had roommates. I've actually lived with one of my business partners and really good friends for like 7.5 years now. He lived with Jake Paul. He was Jake's videographer for like a year. So outside of that 1 year where he lived in Calabasas, I've lived with him. But yeah, when I go to my next place, I think we're going 2-bedroom apartment. I'll have my bedroom separate from my studio. And it would give me the opportunity to kind of make a dedicated studio space where I could make content and then do more stuff outside of just Corn Crazed. So yeah, we'll figure out how that goes. But I'm really into the building out studio spaces and having a dedicated film setup. And I like making content. So I've got a lot more I want to do content-wise. Corn Craze was like my start. It was my hobby. It turned into my job unexpectedly. I had no idea Corn Craze was going to blow up the way it did. Not blow up like it's huge. I mean, it's a good size, but it's not huge. But it is profitable enough to be a job, right? So it turned into a thing where it was like, oh, wait, this is going to make me enough money to where I can't work on other things. I need to focus on this like a full-time deal. And in the off-season, I have a lot more time to get other things going. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but gives you a little rough idea of what's to come in the future. Dedicated studio space for sure. But this has worked for now. I mean, I painted my wall black. I had my friends set up this little shelf behind me. They're like pretty good at designing cool things. So they were like, hey, if we set your camera here and get your lighting here and get these little lights and we have Phil in the back of you and you have your set, you're going to look, you know, like a real YouTuber, even though you're just in the corner of your bedroom, right? What's funny is when you're sitting in my bed, because my bed's over there, right? When you're in my bed, you just see the back of these 2 huge monitors. Like this monitor that right here, the main monitor, is a 32-inch. It's freaking huge, or 34-inch. And then this panel one right here is like probably a 27, whatever the normal size is. So yeah, that's the setup, guys. Just giving you some insight. Let's see. Daniel says, I think Boise could not make it if they lose to CSU, who's been hot recently. I just don't think that Boise's going to lose. Boise's been so hot recently. I just don't. Yeah, Boise's been hot. Jake, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you for being a member. He says, let's talk bets. DJ Moore over 49.5 receiving yards and over 4.5 receptions. Both look decent. I don't know anything about DJ Moore. I haven't watched him play this year. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't watched the Bears very much. I might have watched one Bears game. I do like his receptions, though. Wait, he's on the Bears? He's on the Panthers? Wait. DJ Moore's on the Panthers, I think. No, he's not. Oh, he's on the Bears. Okay, I was right. Wait, he used to be on the Panthers. He's currently on the Bears. Okay. So then who's the receiver 2? Keenan Allen? And then Rome's 3? Okay, whatever it is, wide receiver 1's DJ Moore. I like the 4.5 receptions. I don't know about the receiving yards, but yes, Bears are going to have to throw to stay in this game, so give me the 4.5 yards. Okay, really quick, let's pull up my prize picks. By the way, let me just first say this before I even pull this up. Someone commented the other day, and I'm not upset about it. I was in the moment, but I'm not anymore. Someone commented and said, I feel like I'm being treated like livestock, and you're just pushing ads on me nonstop. This channel used to be XYZ and now it's just a farm where you're trying to make money. He said something like that. And first off, I totally understand. Everybody has their own perception of what's going on, but I'm going to introduce you to reality. When I make content, it takes me 6 hours to make a video, to fully write it, to take all the notes, do the research, then to film it, to edit it, and it's a full-time job. And I'm making 4 videos a week, right? Doing my live streams, doing my research, all that. I cannot afford to have a job during the football season if I'm going to run corn crazy the way I am. For me to make money on it, I make a little bit on YouTube, right? Like with my super chats and with my memberships and all that, I make a little bit, but it's not enough to live, you know? I mean, YouTube only gives me 70% of every super chat I get, right? So it's not enough money to live. I have to take on sponsors. So I take them on. Out of 84 videos, I did the math. Out of 84 videos, only 27 were sponsored this season. So yes, this week I have pushed Prize Picks in the last 2 videos, but that sponsorship's coming to an end. It's only through the regular season. So this is my last week to promote it. So yes, I've pushed hard, but I had to. And people will say like, Connor, you don't need to justify yourself. We understand, da, da, da. There are some people who don't get it because I've had these crazy comments where they're like, your content's not good enough for promotion to have sponsors. Like, it's just nonsense. Like, get the hell out of here. If my content's not good enough to watch because it's got a sponsored thing in it, go watch somebody else because there's tons of people making content talking about the same shit I am. Anyway, I say all that to say this promo's coming to an end. You won't see sponsored content on this channel for a while. So great news for you, bad news for me, but I'm maximizing my opportunity to get paid by my partners while I still can. And every time I make a video and I shout them out, they're paying me. So I got to do what I got to do. Okay, with all of that said, we're going to get to our prize picks this week because people have been hot. I'm just straight hot in our Discord group. I've been unbelievably fire. I don't know what happened or what changed, but my picks have just been hit. I had a 20 turn to 500 last week. Then the next day I had a 20 turn to 85. Yesterday I won a 65 and a 50. I mean, it's nonstop. It's profitable days every single day. So now let's go through some of my lineups because I want to make sure you guys can get in on them too. If you haven't signed up for prize picks, by the way, even though you've seen this ad 100 times, you can use our promo code CORN. People ask me all the time. I'm not kidding you. I get emails. People are like, hey, Connor, how do I support the channel? I've had people donate equipment. Like my light's been donated. One of my mics was donated. All kinds of stuff, right? Software's been donated. They say, how can I support the channel? The number one way to support the channel is to go and use our promo codes on sponsor sites and things like that. So that's the first answer to a lot of your questions. But if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks yet, $5 play equals $50 in credit when you use promo code CORN, which means that $50 in credit you use, you can make plays on Prize Picks following what I'm doing for fun, to watch the game. The whole idea is it's fun. It's ways to get in on the action. Now, with all of that said, let's look at a few of my favorite plays. First, I'm going to minimize myself so I can show you lineups I already have and I'm not in the way. Okay, here's what I took this week. Okay, the Tyreek Hill play I've got with Cameron Scadaboo, we're going to hit that because Tyreek Hill's going to have 1 yard. If you're going to take this Tyreek Hill play, my advice to you is to pair it up. Just do a 2-leg because if you do a 2-leg and Tyreek goes for more than a half receiving yard, which he will, and then your other player goes for more, your 25 will pay 75. And you can max out at 25 usually on these promos. So that's an easy way to win as long as you have a lock that can go here. The next plays I like. On the Nebraska game, Raiola pass yards, Ja'Cory Barney receiving yards. I'm hesitant, by the way, on Raiola pass yards over 175. I like the 175, but once you get to over 199.5, I'm more hesitant. I think Nebraska could be shut down in the pass game in some ways and have to lean on the run. Iowa's a feisty team in that way. John Hull to make 1 field goal, I feel good about. And then Caleb Johnson. This is a line that's interesting to me. It's 141.5 rush plus receive. Very important note there, rush plus receive. The rushing yards is at 132. His receiving line is at 4.5, which means they're giving you like a 6-yard bonus here on receiving yards that I would take advantage of if you want to take his under. And do not play that over. If you're going to play the over on Caleb Johnson, play the rush over, not the rush and receive over. Little hack just based on the math. Okay. Going up here, I like Drew Stevens to make 2 field goals. I like Jamal Banks more than 19 and a half receiving yards. I also like Tawi Walker less than 4.5 receiving yards. He's not a receiving back, and he's kind of like Dante Dowdell. Really like him to stay under. Up here, I used Emmett Johnson more than 29 and a half rush yards. Kyle McCord more than 299 and a half pass yards. And Drew Stevens, the 2 field goals. 20 pays 85 on that. And I took some basketball plays with some other things tonight. Let's go to the board and just look at Nebraska real quick. Where are we at? Nebraska. Perfect. Okay, we can open myself back up. Sorry. So we got Raiola. You can take his pass yards here at 174. You can take his passing touchdowns at 1.5 or 1. Raiola's pass touchdowns, 1 in every single game the last 3 weeks. A lot less likely it hits this week, so I don't like his odds with this Green Goblin. But if you're confident in Raiola, that's one to take. Dylan to throw an interception. He didn't throw one last week, but he threw 6 in the last 4 games before that. I probably lean him not to throw an interception. Emmett Johnson to score a touchdown, I don't like. He never scores touchdowns. He scored 1 against USC, but hasn't outside of that in the last 4. Emmett Johnson rush yards is pinged at 40. You can get that for 29.5, also 59.5. If you want to take a risk, maybe go 59.5. Expect a heavy run game. If the line blocks the way they did last week, he should hit that. I don't like Nayor's receiving yards. I don't even like his low. If I was going to take anything, I'd take him probably Red Devil at more than 49.5. It seems like if he goes off, he goes off. Look at these dead games: 13, 15, 18, 22. Then he goes off against UCLA. He had another game before this where he went for like 60 or 70 yards. So it's either hit or miss for him big time, or the average numbers aren't hitting. So staying away from him. I do like Jamal Banks, though. Consistent. 52, 55, 33, 31. His line's at 34.5. You want safe, go 19.5. Love the 19.5. And then Ja'Cory Barney, this feels really good. 38.5. And you look at the last few weeks: 85, 78, 49, 32 against IU, which was a terrible day for the offense. So for him to even hit that number was impressive, which means you're pretty close 4 out of the last 5 games. Ja'Cory, for his higher number, is 59.5. Not as excited about that one against Iowa. I think it's a more heavy run day, but those are some of my thoughts. If we go to NFL, I kind of like Tua pass touchdowns to go for more than 1.5. So Red Devil. Last week 4, the week before 3, 4 in the 3 games before that. So I think I'm going to make some lineups with that. I also like Cooper Rush, 210.5 passing yards. I was talking to people about it. They think the New York Giants have just given up, which I'm of that same belief. So if the Giants have sold out and they're done, Cooper Rush maybe has another game, 3rd one in a row, where he can hit that passing number. Jahmyr Gibbs, rush receiving touchdown, love. David Montgomery, rush receiving touchdown, love. Josh Jacobs, rush receiving touchdown, love. These are 3 players who are pretty consistent in hitting touchdowns. Who else do I like? I don't know. NFL's hard. Let's go back to college real quick. We'll go back to the show in a second. So, field goals. I'm a fan of the Drew Stevens. I'm a fan of the John Hull. I'm a fan of the Mitch Jeter. I think USC's defense is going to do just enough to keep Notre Dame out of the end zone, and they're going to have to settle for some field goals. USC's kicker's been a little bit more inconsistent. I don't like him as much. He did make 4 last week, but look at the 4 weeks before that. Just nothing. So I'm not touching Mitch Lance. In terms of rush yards, Ollie Gordon is an intriguing one to me. 156 and 121 the last 2 weeks. His only bad game was against an Arizona State defense that's pretty good. Colorado shouldn't be able to slow him down, so Ollie Gordon's probably a good one. What else? The receiver I like the most is Caden Lee at Ole Miss. He hits pretty consistently for me. Oh, I also like Vinny Anthony from Wisconsin. This was their number 1 receiver last week. 137 yards against Nebraska, 53 against Oregon, 61 against Iowa, 68 against Penn State. Vinny has been hot, so I like him. Where's Caden Lee so I can show you that one? Caden Lee is at 74.5 yards, 94, 81, 127, 132. Consistent. He's their number 2 or 3 receiver, depending on who's injured and who's not. Jordan Watkins is probably their number 1 with Trey Harris out, but I don't like taking the number 1 receiver usually because you get matched up with the best corner. So those are a few of my thoughts, few of my picks. I'll have more for you this week in the Discord group. I'm making tons of plays. and we'll see how they go. But it's been a hot week, let me tell you. It's been a hot week. Jason, thanks for being a member. He says Nayor is projected as an undrafted free agent, and Banks is on some boards as a 4th to 6th rounder. Having another game under Holgerson where he features them in the last game allows more positive numbers. This is his argument for why they would play in the bowl game. So Nayor, I think still, I don't think he's playing in the bowl game. Banks, that's a good reason to have him in, more opportunity. The other argument is they could play in the Senior Bowl games, and if they do, that's another opportunity to shine, you know. So I don't know. It's really hard to predict what these guys are going to do and what their agents or families are going to tell them, you know. Matthew says he doubts we have a first rounder. Yeah, I don't think Nebraska's looking at a first rounder right now. No chance. Do you think this is when we start seeing Nebraska produce pro running backs and linemen again? Nebraska, in my opinion, doesn't have a pro running back on this team, right? I think Emmett Johnson is an exceptional talent, and I think he's really good as a college running back, but he doesn't look like a guy who's going to develop into the body that you need to be a pro back. The pro backs are usually bigger built, stronger. Amir Abdullah has made it in the NFL. He's on a 10-year run, but he's a third down back. Amir's been pretty good. I mean, he gets to play still for the Raiders. He's had multiple touchdowns this season. Emmett kind of fits in that category, though, right? He's a third down back, smaller. I just don't know if he could develop into it. Dante Dowdell, he's a bigger, heavier back. It's not like he has that elite speed or athleticism. He's more just a downhill bruiser. I don't know what his ceiling is. So right now, the pro running back conversation, in my opinion, is kind of dead. The lineman conversation is, that's going to be interesting because if you have like a Grant Bricks who gets developed, or I don't even know who else is really good on that offensive line that has a high ceiling, but if a couple of those guys get developed, then you could see some NFL guys. So hopefully. Play says, what do you think about Nash getting drafted? I hope Nash gets drafted. I just don't know where it'll be. 5th round, 6th round. I don't know what they think about him athleticism wise. It's really hard to be a fan of a team and see all of your struggles and then expect guys to get drafted, right? No disrespect to the players. It's hard. It's like this team loses so many times and they get worked and beat up. It's what's a scout seeing them? Because I'm not a scout, so I don't know what they're exactly looking for. So it's hard for me to make a prediction for some of those things. I can just go off what I see online and some projections, but right now I haven't seen a lot. JJ, thank you for being a member. He says, what camera do you use for your stream? I use a Sony a6400. I've been using it for like 4 years, I think. Doug says, why not move to Omaha? I've talked about this before. I love Nebraska. Like, huge fan of Nebraska, the state, and like being there and visiting. I spent a lot of my childhood going to Chadron every summer, every winter, 2 weeks at a time. Significant amount of my childhood was spent in Chadron, and I loved it. It's a different lifestyle, and it felt very homey. At the place I am in my life, there is no way that with all of the things I have going on, the places I go out to, the friends I have, that I could move to the center of the country, so far away from all of those things that I do consistently and all of those friends I hang out with, and be far removed from them. I think that's the best way to say it. It's a different lifestyle, and I'm still in this phase where I'm traveling a lot, going back and forth, places like New York, Miami, LA. All my friends live in these big cities, and a lot of my opportunities in entertainment. So if I'm far removed from the coast, it's just really hard. The one thing I've noticed about living in LA, I've grown up in California my whole life. Things happen faster here, and there are more advancements technology-wise and culture-wise, and it takes longer to get to the middle of the country. So the farther away you move from the coast, the more it's almost like you're living in a different time, which is awesome. I think it's very cool. I'm 31 years old. I'm about to be 32 years old next year, right? I'm just in this place where I can't slow it down. I'm trying to speed it up. And moving to Nebraska is when I would slow things down. So a prime example I remember sending this to people. Like, my dad lives in Oklahoma. There's these Uber robots. They're like Postmates and Uber Eats. And if I order Uber Eats right now, keep in mind, I live at Sunset and Vine in Hollywood. So I'm 1 block away from Hollywood Boulevard. If you've ever walked around the streets, like John Wayne's star is out in front of my building, right? Like all the stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, that's right where I live. So if I order Uber Eats, a robot comes to my apartment, it drives up, and then I just walk outside. And when I say I'm here, it opens a lid, like a heated compartment and it says take out your food, and you take out your food and that's it. Well, they've got that going on here. So when I sent that 4 years ago when it started to people who live in the Midwest, they were like, what the hell is that thing? But because they've been testing all this technology and all these crazy things out in LA, I'm seeing what's going on. I like to be a part of that. So I want to live in a place that's, more advanced, I guess, from like a technology aspect, and like has all those tech companies around and people who are doing some different things in entertainment and culture. And it's just a different way of life. So again, no disrespect to Nebraska. Nebraska's fantastic. I love it. But for where I'm at, it's the wrong time. The reason I gave that whole explanation, by the way, is because I had someone DM me a long time ago and say, you hate Nebraska and you said you would never live here and F you and all this. I'm unfollowing you, all this weird stuff. That's the one thing about being online. You can say something that's completely harmless or you don't mean anything bad about it, but people have their own perceptions and they can manipulate or twist your words into believing, whatever they want to believe about you. So there are times when people will say, Connor, you don't need to defend yourself. We understand. Well, yeah, 95% of the people who are watching my content have common sense, are very cool and totally normal guys or women, just like I am. There's just this small percentage who are a little whacked out. So when they have these extremist takes or reactions to things I say or do, I'm just like, yo, take a freaking breath, right? So that's why I have to explain myself sometimes, although most of you don't need to hear it. Most of you are totally in line and totally understand where I'm coming from. Zep, if you're from Cali, why are you a Nebraska fan? I grew up with my grandpa who was a diehard Nebraska fan, and he ingrained it in me from a young age. I was going to his house, watching games on his TV. He was buying me Nebraska jerseys, getting me the autographed pictures. I remember I was 10, 11, 12 years old, and we'd be on eBay, and he'd say, okay, well, here, we're going to get this autographed Roger Craig photo or Tom Rathman, and he'd be telling me stories about watching them play. I remember he told me about going to meet Bob Devaney in his office at the university back in, I don't even know what year it would have been, but going to meet with Bob Devaney, and he had it was like a postcard from him or a signed something that Bob signed for him before he left. So he told me stories about that. And yeah, I've just got this connection to Nebraska because of my grandpa. And that's where I'd say it really started for me. And then as I got older, you're a college football fan, you kind of stick with the team who you loved first. Obviously, I grew up going to USC games. My dad went there, and I have that connection. But it's not the same because it wasn't my first love. I didn't get into USC football until I was like 10 or 11, but I got into Nebraska football when I was like 3 or 4. Huge difference. Caleb says, does Boise play Oregon State? Yeah, Boise is a 18-point favorite, something like that. I saw a super chat I want to respond to really quick. Sarah, thank you for the $2 super chat. She says, congrats on 23,000 subs. Happy Thanksgiving, GBR. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It's so interesting. I'm not complaining, but this last month was really hard. The views went down. People didn't care. They were tapped out. The diehards, like you guys, you cared. You were here. It's different. But in general, a lot of people just tapped out on the season. I had 125 new subscribers in the month of November. 125. I had 800 in the month of September. It just shows you the difference in engagement and excitement around the season back in September versus the month of October or November, whatever that was. Anyway, not a big deal is what it is, but it was exciting to hit 23,000 because I was like, damn, thank God we finally got there, And I'm not the channel who goes and makes clickbait content or breaking news where I report on someone else's news. Like, if I wanted to get a lot of views or a lot of subscribers, what I could do, it's just a douchebag thing to do, and I never would. I could go to Sean Callahan's website or Inside Nebraska, where Tim, I don't know how to say his last name. It starts with a V. Verghese? I don't know. Tim and Sean Callahan, Brian Munson, Steven Sipple, they all report on news, right? So what I could do is I could steal their content, and then I could make a headline saying, breaking news, Nebraska lands XYZ player, or Nebraska's about to land XYZ player. But I don't think it's right to steal people's content. And I don't think it's right to report on things that aren't my things to report on, right? So there are things where I never want to be the person who breaks the news, but there are things I've hinted at the past because, there are times when I do have inside information. But for the most part, I try to keep my mouth shut. People tell me things because they trust that I'm not going to say it, So I have a lot of information I'm really lucky to have because I don't repeat it. I don't run off and tell everybody about it. And I typically wait to react to it once the news breaks or comes out. So the downside of that is, gosh, it feels like there's all this opportunity where I could go get a lot more views, make a lot more money, But at the same time, I have integrity, and I'm not going to do that because it's not my place to do so. So I just keep my mouth shut. I make the content I'm able to make, and I can keep a clean, strong reputation. So glad we were able to get to 23K, doing it the right way, doing it the way I think is fair and just. Let's see. Juan says Dana is a great OC and not a head coach. Did you see West Virginia or Houston? He's arguing that Dana wouldn't go and be a head coach somewhere else, or someone else wouldn't want him to be the head coach. You know, it's interesting with the new landscape and how guys like Chip Kelly have decided to stay at Ohio State and instead of play at or instead of coach at UCLA, where he's got to take on a lot more responsibility, right? So is Dana in that same boat, or does he want to be in control and want to run a program? I lean on the side of Dana would rather run a program, but I don't know him. I've never talked to him. You've only heard a few interviews with him. I'm still getting acquainted. I haven't done a deep dive on Dana Holgerson, right? You know, my dad's got all these friends out in Oklahoma. So he lives on this lake called Grand Lake. Okay, it's the biggest lake in Oklahoma where everybody fishes. And my dad's a connected guy, right? So he knows all the big ballers on that lake. And a lot of them know these football coaches. Like one of his friends is really good friends and tight with, I think Sam Pittman. Pretty sure that guy knows Dana Holgerson really well because he fishes with him on Grand Lake. Anyway, I hear a lot of stories. And yeah, I just think I should probably ask these people, hey, I should probably call these people and be like, hey, what do you think? Because Nebraska's got some of these coaches who you might be familiar with. If you think it was going to come down to X, Y, Z, or how about just call them for me and get a feel, and then let me know what you think. So maybe I need to make some phone calls to my dad's friends and see what their opinions are. But it's really a guess as to how good is Nebraska's odds at keeping a guy like Holgerson in an offensive coordinator role versus him wanting to take another head coaching job somewhere else. It's just a who freaking knows. So much of this is just a guess, right? I don't want to lie to you. Doug, thanks for the $2 super chat. Thanks for being a member. Thoughts on the 105 player roster? Happy holiday. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, Doug. I think the 105 player roster is so BS. It kills the recruiting and being able to build depth at a crazy level. It hurts the high school players. It hurts every player. It hurts the JUCO players. It hurts guys who are underdeveloped. It hurts guys who haven't gotten their shot yet. They talked about John Bullock. He came out of nowhere. Now you've got a Luke Lindenmeyer who started as a walk-on, built his way into being a starting receiver or a starting tight end at Nebraska, who's obviously carved out a role for himself in this offense. What's crazy is you're not going to have those stories going forward, and you're going to have a lot of guys who have to enter the portal, not because they want to, but because they're forced to. And AJ Rollins is a prime example. He didn't walk at senior day last week, but he's not a senior. Does that mean he's going to be forced out? Most likely. How many guys are going to be forced out? Well, probably a lot. 25, 30. How many are going to opt to leave versus Coach Rule sits down and has to say, hey, man, thank you for your service, but we have to go a different direction because we literally have to make cuts today. The shitty part about it is, the tough part about it is, what's the reason? Well, it all comes down to money. I don't know what the tie is. I don't know what the NCAA sees or whoever's in charge is looking at, but for some reason they think economically it makes sense to get rid of these players. It makes more sense to, I don't know if it has to do with the portal and they think the portal's too flooded. I don't know. Who knows? There's no justification. It's just, I know that it all ties back to one thing: money. So it's very frustrating. It's kind of annoying, and yeah, you just kind of feel for these players. It sucks because you're going to have a guy like AJ Rollins who's getting developed at Nebraska, trying to play, do his thing. I mean, we say they're pro players, right? But not all of them are pro players. A guy like him might be going to school because he's trying to get his degree, right? He's on scholarship, just trying to get through and go get a real job in the real world and just have an experience playing for a team, okay? He doesn't have that opportunity now. He's got to go to McNeese State, or he's got to go to, Youngstown, whatever. And I'm sure it'll be good for a lot of players. There's pluses and minuses to all of these things, right? So if you force some of Bama and Nebraska and Georgia's backup players who maybe could thrive at a lower division to go and play there, maybe they'll turn out to be superstar players and get a chance in the NFL. I'm sure there'll be plenty of that, but that wasn't their choice. Their choice was, I want to go to Texas A&M. I want to go to Texas. I want to go to one of these big brand schools. And even if I'm not a starting player, and even if I have to wait my turn, at least I'm getting this experience and playing with this team and building these connections. So frustrating with the roster limitations. Doesn't really make much sense. Walk-on program obviously is going to be impacted. And yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out. College football is an ever-changing beast, and it's happening so quickly in front of our eyes, you know? Silence responding to Dana Holgerson says he sounds like he's burnt out from coaching and really enjoyed calling the offense. You know, what if Nebraska continues to improve? And what if he's like, if we were able to win 8 games this year with all the struggles Nebraska went through, and you've got a bunch of good defensive players coming back, and obviously this recruiting class is going to be hot. Nebraska could go and get some really strong transfer players on the line and the receiver. What's the ceiling? And if you want to challenge, Dana Holgerson now has a quarterback, a 5-star potential NFL guy, superstar NFL guy. He's an NFL guy already, but a potential like first pick, top 5 pick to work with. And think about, the excitement that would bring for Dana. It's like, wow, we get to revitalize a program, and we have all this energy, and obviously the Nebraska fan base loves it, and he'll make money. I mean, it's not a money issue. Like I said before, these coaches are already rich. No matter what he does, he's going to be rich forever. So, because he's going to work. You're going to be rich forever as long as you're willing to work, and you're in that profession where they pay you insane amounts of money, right? Not that it's not justified. I think it's awesome. When you're managing a business that makes that much, you got to get paid your percent. So hopefully it works out for Holgerson in Nebraska. Respect how you built the channel. Thank you, Arok. Respect how you built the channel and the values you stuck to. Did you see the latest interview with Holgerson? Sounds like that man is having a lot of fun and really enjoyed Lincoln. I saw clips. I haven't watched the whole interview. It's tough for me sometimes because I got to go back to back making content. So I didn't get to watch his whole presser. I read the notes, and when I get time tonight or tomorrow, I'll watch the rest of it. I saw it was pretty long. It looked like it was a long interview, a 55-minute press conference with Tony White and then him. So I really like Holgerson. I think he's got good attitude, good energy. Obviously, he's a little bit harsh and direct, but that's sometimes appreciated. You need someone who's going to go out there and be honest with your team and with themselves, and all that BS. All that BS about Nebraska. It's like a soft culture when you're not willing to go out and be aggressive. So all the BS we've seen in the past where guys aren't held accountable is what led to where we're at today. So if you have someone who comes in and changes that energy and says, no, we're not going to continue to allow this weak behavior, you're going to see stronger men. So hopefully that works out. Judy says, thanks, Judy, for being here. She says, Holgerson said he had more fun Saturday than he's had in a long time. He doesn't need money. He might like the challenge after 35 years. I hope so, Judy. I hope you're freaking right. Arok says he thinks the 105 is more to have continuity when it comes to each team. It's going to slowly turn into the NFL-like model where there is a salary cap and lots of rules. I agree. 100%. Side Guy says, what do you think about Coleman's transfer? I made a whole video about it. Summed up, I think it sucks. Nebraska can't lose their best players, but at the same time, your best players want to play, and if he's not going to be on the field, then he's going to go somewhere else who's going to promise him that he will be. I'm certain that a team tampered, like Oklahoma, he's going to go and play there where they promised him playing time, I'm sure, and the good thing is Nebraska's going to bounce back, and they're going to replace him with somebody as good or better. So I'm optimistic. I wouldn't be too worried about one guy transferring. But let's make some picks. Let's go through the weekend slate because it's going to be a fun one. You got games starting tomorrow. Memphis, Tulane. Don't know anything about it. I know Tulane's a pretty good team, but so is Memphis. That spread seems pretty big. Probably won't touch it. Boise, Oregon State. Oregon State playing for bowl eligibility is a 19-point dog. My God, how do you not take Oregon State plus 19? I did. I'm taking Oregon State. Colorado minus 16 against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's backup QB came in, or third string QB, whatever he is. I think he's a freshman. He's been playing better. I'm taking Oklahoma State plus 16.5. I got that on Bro Throw. So Colorado will bounce back and win, I'm sure, but it's just a lot of points to cover. Minnesota plays Wisconsin. Wisconsin playing for a bowl game at home. They're a 1.5-point favorite. It's going to be a cold weather game. I'm taking Minnesota. Almost beat Penn State last week. And I think Minnesota's just got, I don't know, they've got some juice about them, and they've had some good wins and almost had another big one last weekend. Going down to Mississippi State, Ole Miss. Love Mississippi State plus the 26. This matchup's similar to Nebraska, Iowa in the sense that it's always freaking close. So I'm going to say it's going to be close again. I love Ole Miss. I'm going to be wearing my Ole Miss jersey while I watch this game, and I'm rooting for them to win. But I want Mississippi State to keep it close, so we get good entertainment value, and so I win my bet. Take the points. Nebraska, Iowa is now down to 3.5. My God. So let's talk about all my bets on this game. I'm on Nebraska at +6. As soon as it hit 6, I jumped on it. It went quickly to 5.5 again, then down to 5, then to 4.5, then to 4, now all the way down to 3.5. So I'm already on Nebraska at 6, thank God. I also took Nebraska money line, so I'm writing that. I also took Nebraska team total over 16.5 points. I do believe this is a game where Nebraska could win 17-14, 17-10, 21-10, something like that, in which case I like Nebraska's team total at 17.5 or 16.5. So I'm taking the over there. I'm taking Utah +10 against UCF. UCF, obviously, the better team it looked like, but their record does not say they are. So I am going to take Utah in a game where, any team can win. The Big 12 is a very balanced league. Michigan, Ohio State. This one's so funny. My friend Nick, he's a big Ohio State fan who's obviously been disappointed by the downfall of Ohio State the last few years and not being able to turn the corner. Obviously losing to teams like Michigan over and over and over. And now this is their chance to finally blow them out. But, I don't respect this win. Ohio State could blow out Michigan, and I'm not even going to watch the game. I don't care. So all the Ohio State fans that are like, oh, this is our chance to get revenge and we get to punish Michigan for those wins and we get, to clap back. Who cares? You're beating up on a team who's down bad. It's like slapping a disabled guy. That's disrespectful. It's wrong. So, no, it's not fun to win. No, it's not fun to watch. It's not a respectable win. Ohio State can say we're going to run up the score and do whatever we're going to do. Have fun. Call me when Michigan's relevant and you beat them, because the last 3 times you played them, you got your ass kicked. And I wish it would happen again tomorrow based on the way Ohio State fans are talking about it, because, like I said, they want to steal candy from children, essentially. But have fun. Go win your game that means absolutely nothing to anybody except for you. Okay, next is Tennessee and Vanderbilt. I would probably take Vanderbilt +10.5. Don't know if I'm going to play it, but rivalry vibes, right? In-state, 2 hours away from each other. Vanderbilt's been decent. They already got the bowl game, but yeah, 10.5's a lot. Clemson -3 against South Carolina. Love, 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 love South Carolina. Clemson has done absolutely nothing against good teams this year, so South Carolina has almost gotten to 10 wins. I mean, they've been so close in two of their losses. I think it was LSU they should have beaten, and Alabama. Could have put them at 10-1. Could have been a playoff team. Is what it is, taking the points. Illinois Northwestern not touching. Louisville and Kentucky. Interesting. This one's interesting. Louisville, in my opinion, is a much better team than Kentucky. The spread is only Louisville -4. I might take Kentucky plus the 4. Haven't pulled the trigger yet. We'll flirt with the idea later. Kansas, Baylor. Kansas is one of the hottest teams in the country right now, if not the hottest. Actually, Kansas is the hottest team in the country right now. They're off 3 back-to-back-to-back top 25 wins. They first took down Iowa State. They then took down, let me double check. Don't want to say it wrong, BYU, I think. Yep, they then took down BYU. Then they took down Colorado. One of those was a road game, the BYU one, obviously. And now they're looking to pull off another upset since they opened up as the dog, which is now shifted to them being the favorite against Baylor on the road. I got Kansas at +1.5. It's cross 0. I don't care. I love Kansas. Give me more Kansas. West Virginia against Texas Tech. West Virginia covered for us last week. I think Texas Tech did too. Can't remember. But I am taking West Virginia in this game plus the 3. Boston College covered for me last week in a big way. They looked dominant over North Carolina. Obviously led to Mac Brown getting fired. I'm going to take Boston College minus the 5.5 against Pitt. I believe I got this at 4.5. It's now moved to 5.5 though. But Boston College is trending up. Pitt is trending down. So we'll take them. Notre Dame is at USC. I am taking USC. I am taking the points. I am also taking the money line. I am rooting against Notre Dame. I want those imposters out of the playoff. So USC has not had to leave LA in like 3 weeks. USC is now in week, I believe, 3, starting Jaden Mayava. They have improved as an offense. Notre Dame is coming off a road trip that took them to New York City. Now they're taking a road trip to LA. It's tough to travel all that and not be a little bit worn out. So USC plus the points, USC on the money line. Auburn plays Alabama. Auburn, one of my favorite plays of the weekend last week. Auburn ended up winning in quadruple overtime. Unbelievable finish. Taking Auburn plus the points. I think this kind of goes either way. Alabama probably wins, probably covers. I'm rooting for Auburn right now, so I'm going to take them. Arizona and Arizona State. This is a major stay away for me. Love Arizona State this year, but big rivalry similar to Nebraska and Iowa, and probably bigger than Nebraska Iowa since it's in state. Hate long time rivals. 8.5 points is a lot, so stay away. Arkansas, Mizzou. Taking Arkansas at Missouri +3, which says this would be on a neutral site. This would be an even spread. Arkansas's looked like shit at times this year, but Missouri's looked worse. Love taking the road team there. Michigan State, Rutgers. Michigan State playing for a bowl game. Man, this is a really tough one to pick. Have not pulled the trigger on what I'll do yet. Really wanted to take Rutgers in a bounce back spot after last week's disgusting loss to Illinois. They gave up a 40-yard touchdown pass on the final play of the game after they tried to ice the kicker who missed the field goal kick. Next play, touchdown pass for 40 yards, lost the game. Anyway, I don't know what to do here. Not touching it right now. Kennesaw State, we won on last week at like +9. Now they're getting +12 against a crappy Louisiana Tech. I'm taking the +12 again. I think Kennesaw won outright last week. If I'm not forgetting what that actual outcome was. Cincinnati's playing for a bowl game against TCU, and TCU's 3.5-point favorite on the road. I'll probably stay away though. I don't care. IU and Purdue, 29-point home favorite Indiana. 29-point home favorite. Hitting Indiana. Love Indiana. Bounce back spot. Purdue sucks. Rivalry game. Indiana's going to put their foot to the floor and they're going to stomp Purdue out. I'm giving the points. Texas A&M in Texas. Huge game. Saturday night. This is a huge game with playoff implications. Texas A&M wins. They're in the playoff potentially. I mean, do they make the SEC championship if they win? I can't remember. But getting 5 points at home off of a loss at Auburn last week, yeah, give me the points. Give me the 5 freaking points. Iowa State and Kansas State, no pick here. Kansas State's obviously looking like the better team as of late. I mean, they both lost recently. I don't know what I would do. Probably stay away from me. Nevada, UNLV. I took Nevada at +19. Just a total toss-up. No idea what'll happen. It's now at -17.5 for UNLV. Don't bet this if you don't have a feel. That's a who knows. Nevada sucks. UNLV's pretty good. Virginia Tech. Battle of the bowl game. At night, I'm taking Virginia plus the points. For sure. Playing for a bowl game. And that's it. That's the card. Those are my thoughts. Those are my predictions. We'll see how it goes. I absolutely hammered last weekend on pretty much every freaking game I bet. And I cleaned up. I had a great week 13. Let's see. A lot of people in the chat talking about Holgerson and the odds he'll stay. It's so crazy. It's just a guess, Grow the farm up says, what if Holgerson took Raiola with him? That's actually a funny comment. It's actually a funny comment. Fortunately, we're in no danger of losing Raiola right now. But all right, guys. Well, it's been a good chat. It's been a good video. We've been on here for like an hour and a half or something. So I hope you guys all have a good Thanksgiving. I'll be back here after the Iowa game on Friday night, celebrating, hopefully. Hopefully we don't have a meltdown. Hopefully there's a lot of optimism in the chat for the bowl game. And I appreciate you guys all for tapping in and leaving a bunch of comments so I could keep the conversation going for as long as we did. But I had a good time hanging out with you guys. I can see the chat's still going. But with all that said, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.